Yes, sir.
Woo! My voice a little cracked.
Stay with us, don't play with us.
And we here.
It's the Salt and Nets podcast.
And we here.
Today we got a special episode for you. We're going to be touching base with Brooklyn Netcast to get a little bit of perspective on the landscape that we find ourselves in as Nets fans. We always say this is not a Brooklyn Nets podcast specifically, so we had to get a real Brooklyn Nets podcast in the building to lend some of his talents to our cause. So, my friend, why don't you introduce yourself to some of our listeners?
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Caleb, and I run Brooklyn Netcast. It's a Brooklyn Nets podcast and Twitter page. If you guys are Nets fans, you've probably seen us by now. It's just covering day-to-day stuff, doing podcasts, YouTube videos, obviously Twitter shows, Twitter Spaces is probably what we do most of. But yeah, just a lot of dialogue around the team and the NBA as a whole. And we do like other sports. It's me, Cassius Ransom, and a friend named Brendan. And we run the page. We're all big basketball guys, football guys, and baseball fans as well. Okay. But yeah, basketball is kind of my forte, I'd say. But yeah, I'm happy to be on with you guys, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, no problem, bro.
Yes, sir. We're excited to have you.
For sure.
So we wanted to kind of talk a bit about, because I think with everybody in this space, some of the most interesting parts of really our stories is how we ended up in this space. It's a relatively new space, this independent media landscape that we find ourselves in. And so that provides one benefit of that. A lot of us, I think, always kind of were interested in maybe sports broadcast or maybe just being able to have a larger impact on the fandom, but didn't necessarily see this as a medium and an opportunity. What is your relationship to the game? As far as when did you realize that this was something you were extremely passionate about? And I see sports in general is something that you're passionate about.
So I realized how passionate I was about sports when I was quite young. I'd say around 4 or 5. I played a lot of baseball growing up. That was the main sport I played. So just from that perspective, I was really into baseball, played some soccer, played some basketball. Very quickly, tapped into like hockey and stuff. Never played football, wasn't a big into playing football, but right then I knew I was going to be big into sports. And then I started getting into like the broadcasting and the talk shows more when I was probably like 7, 8. And this sounds really corny and cheesy, but I used to, mute the games when I was little and like talk over and kind of broadcast the games for myself, like the Red Sox games. I'm like a diehard Red Sox fan, which I know is weird for a lot of people that like, because I'm a Nets fan and a Bills fan. I'm from Buffalo. So it's a bit weird, but it's just kind of like a family thing.
Trust me, bro. Like,
born and raised in Brooklyn, he's a Celtics fan.
Exactly. Like I totally feel where you're coming from with
that.
Yeah, it's a weird mix though. But yeah, I used to mute the games. Same with I watch some hockey too. I used to mute the games and kind of announce them myself. So that's when I really started to grow that passion. And then when I turned 16, it really started to take off. And I got on Twitter more, obviously, just started talking about basketball. And then when I turned 17, we started Netcast. Okay. And it kind of has taken off from there, especially with college. I go for sports media. Right. So that's even propelled it even more to be a passion and hopefully a future career.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, again, I think we're blessed to be in a time now where people with your level of passion and honestly talent, there's kind of been this ceiling. That. No problem. There's kind of been this ceiling that's been removed, where kind of the true essence of what it is to be a fan. Because I have my problems with quote unquote fan culture, and when I say that, I'm not talking about guys like us. A lot of the time, I'm talking about some of the entitlement and some of the disrespect that we'll see. But I think some of the sports landscape honestly propagates that at the moment, and we're not always getting the most nutritious content. And I've found that through more of what we're seeing now, there's more nutritional value, right, per calorie of the content that we're consuming right now. And I think
absolutely,
I think that's phenomenal, especially as it relates to analytics. Because one of my goals is to educate myself more in analytics. And you talked about playing baseball, and baseball is kind of like the godfather of that, right? Which
Oh,
inspired,
absolutely.
yeah, which inspired this index culture and us trying to really have a serious understanding of what value is. And of course, it stems from capitalism, and it stems from people trying to get the most out of their investments on an ownership level, on a management level.
100%.
But oftentimes, we can trust things that are done in the service of capital to be truer than most, just for the simple fact that people ain't playing with their money, right? Um, what is your relationship to analytics? Is it something that you've always embraced, as coming from baseball specifically as well?
Whew. Okay. I would say this is I need a mix of eye test and analytics for everything,
Oh yeah.
because obviously analytics can be misleading. They have improved drastically over, I think, the last 10, I'd say last 5-10 years. Analytics have been much more valuable than they have in the past. I think it's where we've seen the real jump. And it's something I've gotten more and more into the past probably 2-3 years, as I really dove into sports in a whole another way than I had before, by tweeting about the Nets all the time and just kind of trying to inform myself. Because me, like yourself, I think the most entertaining and enjoyable thing about sports is just learning and getting to understand the game as much as possible. So I will definitely say that my love for analytics and understanding has grown greatly over the past 2-3 years. And it's just something I tend to find measures the value of a player. Like you said, like ownership has really obviously dove into that, trying to figure out who they're going to pay, how much you extend somebody for, how much you should pay this guy for, what trades look like. It's just been extremely a very much a growing field and growing category to get invested in.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the way that we package it makes it palatable for people and really is critical to its kind of acceptance. But it is context. It's like you said, it provides a level of context where without some of those metrics, or without some way to kind of like acknowledge maybe the higher value, even just the higher value of the 3-point shot, which I think is inherently understood, right? And points per possession and stuff like
Absolutely.
that. And you'll see stuff on Twitter, like people will say when they're trying to, because everybody has their guy or this and that and the third, some people will say, well, Kevin Durant is the greatest scorer ever, better than Michael Jordan, and this is the reason why. And you'll see somebody down in the replies like, points per possession don't mean shit when we're talking about the biggest stages. And it's like, dude, Michael Jordan looks phenomenal from a points per possession perspective, and probably would look more phenomenal if he played today, right? You don't necessarily have to tear down one thing in service of another.
Right. It's all about adaptability as well, too.
Yeah, but I also think that it can work to otherize people, and that's kind of where I kind of see myself trying to engage with it most, because people, I think, from communities like the ones that Biggs and I are from, which are, majority minority and underserved communities, I think there's a lot of otherizing, right? And you'll see people like Stephen A. Smith say that a lot of the numbers focus, he feels like excludes black people. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, right? I think that when you're talking about impoverished people or minorities in general, I think that there's gaps in education systems that math is not the one area, right, that ends up being weak for people who are
no,
underserved.
it's I tend to believe that I never understood that whole idea that it's only like mainly math. It's pretty well rounded across the board. If like in impoverished areas, education is just worse. Like they don't say, we're going to leave math alone. I never understood that. It never made sense to me.
Yeah.
No, it's science, English, simple life skills. Just around the board. Yeah, that's something I'm happy you brought that up, because I never understood why everyone's like, oh yeah, it's math was like the main thing. No, it's pretty well rounded in a bad way.
Yeah, and I think and this is where, like, when people are making impassioned arguments, they're not always sitting and dissecting how it jives with their other positions. Because I'm sure somebody like Stephen A. Smith, I've heard him espouse how proud he is to be a symbol of success in the area of journalism, and sports journalism specifically, where a lot of black people didn't experience the kind of success that he's experienced. So on the one hand, he does somewhere in his mind know and acknowledge that the humanities and journalism and areas of that, things of that nature are also impacted greatly.
He's even
right?
went to the extent of putting people that look like us onto onto the same platform. You know what I mean? Like,
and then when you get to a point where you're making an impassioned argument on a debate television show, sometimes that gets lost. But one thing I did want to touch on before we kind of get to my next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Did you specifically come with the team from Jersey? Were you a fan of the Nets when they were in Jersey?
Okay, so let me explain my fandom in full for the Nets. I was a fan of no basketball about 14 years ago. So I was quite young. I turned 20 on September 12th. So yeah, I'm 19 right now. So I am.
Oh, sweet! I'm September 19th.
Hey, that's what's up. See, September birthdays are the best.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's the best group of people. But yeah, I was I was 5, 6, right in that range, and I was not a fan of basketball yet. But my neighbor moved in. Excuse my cat; she's extremely loud right now for some reason.
It's all good.
But yeah, he put a not Brooklyn, just a Nets flag on the front doorstep, and I'm like, oh, that's basketball. And he's like, yeah, it's the Nets, and we became very close over the years. And then I used to have me over to his house. I went to my first Nets game in 2012, I believe, against the Raptors. So I was a fan 1 year of the New Jersey Nets, West Brooklyn. But I do point to that as me being young, rather than me joining them because they came to Brooklyn. Because I'm still in Buffalo, so it doesn't really matter to me as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a New York team, but at the same time, it's not like there's a specific attachment via Brooklyn. And I kind of have a similar relationship. I'm a little bit older than you. I'm turning 26 on the 19th. And
nice.
Yeah, so I'm about 13, 14 when it gets announced that the Nets will be coming to Brooklyn, and I'm just really basketball is just becoming my favorite sport at that point. At that point, I'm into everything. I'm into football, I'm into basketball. I probably liked football more at that point and wanted to be like a running back, because I was in middle school, I was 6 feet, and I didn't really end up growing too much more than that, but I was 6 feet, and I was I'm right there. Adrian Peterson is a running back. I'm not too tall. I want to do something cool, right? And it was but I ended up just falling in love with basketball, just playing it on the playground like a lot of guys do. And then I kind of made it my mission to play in high school, and I didn't enjoy any crazy success, but it meant a lot to me as somebody who didn't kind of come up through the AAU system. I didn't play any AAU ball until I realized it existed the summer after my freshman year in high school. So the announcement comes that the Nets are coming to Brooklyn, and I'm just becoming a heavy basketball fan, and I'm from Brooklyn, and I'm perfect. And so I actually was with the team for a year or two in New Jersey as well, just because it was announced and we knew they were coming to Brooklyn. And I was all right, these are my guys. And then Darren Williams came and everything like that. And of course, you appreciate past Nets history as a basketball fan, right? Like the Jason Kidd years and stuff like that. And having Vince Carter, Kenyon Martin, but it is interesting how this Brooklyn move has generated so many fans with such unique stories and perspectives and relationships to the team. And I do hope that the people who are fans of the New Jersey Nets, I do hope that those of them that have migrated with us don't ever feel like that there's competition there, right? Because I do think that we need this. We need everybody's unique story and everybody's unique relationship to this team to grow a fan base that I think often gets looked down upon and not really served.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you buy into the idea that we are quote unquote Clippers East, and that though we exist in this huge market, we can't tap into it because the New York Knicks have some kind of gravitational force and superpower that we just will not be able to overcome?
No, and I think that whole idea kind of got proven false when Kevin Durant and Kyrie came here. Because clearly the market means something. You got those two to come here, who are still are two of the bigger superstars in the game and some of the best players of all time, and James.
For a hot second.
So this whole idea was that people are but I think also the Clippers too. I mean, they brought in Kawhi and PG. So I understand there's other, where you are in building a team obviously plays into it as well. But clearly the big market still works.
Yeah.
So, we're not as big as the Knicks. and the Clippers are not as big as the Lakers, but the large market that both teams still have has been put to use correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think would you see that that's kind of similar in the way that those two organizations try to make their name is through being different. Like, we are not those guys. We don't have to be those guys, and we don't want to be those guys. I do think that the NBA has done the Clippers just cold. Like, what they have allowed to go on in that same building in relation to both teams
in the basement.
is just cold. That's cold. It's cold shit that's happening there where it's like, like this is still in it. Like, these guys would be better off being in a small market and just being dignified than some of the nonsense that they got to put up with, and that everybody just thinks is like, it's a part of that like sports bro culture where it's like, yeah, you guys haven't earned. It's like, I'm a professional, just like these guys. I'm in the NBA, and I'm sure it's great. I'm sure it's always been great to be a Clipper. You're in LA and you're a basketball player, but it's like that thing where nobody wants to find themselves in Sacramento, and Sacramento's in California. I know it's different. I know that the demographic and the layout of Sacramento is not LA, but it's always weird. Like, no one ever talks about Sacramento as like a free agent destination. Like, it's not like, oh, it's still in California. It's like, nah, nobody wants to end up there.
They're on the rise, though. They are on the rise. They'll be a destination soon enough.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox has been making me eat my words almost as quickly as he runs.
I honestly think they're a destination right now. Like, you can pick any star.
Yeah,
to go there.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I've been I have a few players that aren't Nets that I'm a big fan of.
Mm-hmm.
Fox, when he got drafted, was one of my favorite players because I don't watch a ton of college basketball and I don't have like a team.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sometimes it's like you turn on the TV. I used to see him on TV all the time. Like, all right, I'm just gonna kind of see where he goes, watch his career play out, and I was a big fan right away because he's that uber athletic point guard with just tons of athleticism, and he just has that. I don't want to say that dog because it's overused, but he's just got that fight to him every single time he steps on the court.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also a reason I'm a big fan of Ant, but he's a rising superstar, and he already is, I would say. And we're going to have like 10, 15 years of him and 10 years of Fox. So I'm excited to see those two, really elevate those smaller markets in Minnesota. And not that Sacramento's a small market, but comparative to other teams in California, they are.
Yeah. And, speaking of guys that you're fans of other than Nets, to take it a little bit back to the Nets briefly, I have players that I have things that I'm angry about, players that are no longer on the team. Guys like Jared Allen, that's something that infuriates me.
Yeah, that one stings. I'm not even
like, I have fond memories of when we became media darlings for that moment, right before we landed KD and Kyrie, and I have a very unique relationship with those guys because when it was announced that they signed with the team, I ran around my house screaming, right? So I was excited.
Same here, yeah.
Yeah, this was the culmination of everything. And I think I was super early on the get these guys out of here train. Like, it was just me, but I saw what was happening and I was like, okay, they came here. Because these are two very precocious guys. These are two unique dudes, right? And you got to see it early with them because you'll spend the whole time going, no way. No way. They wouldn't. Guys just don't do that. And I don't subscribe to the idea that there's a patent way a star is supposed to act. I'm way more happy in this ecosystem where the stars get to be who they are, as long as they matter. And sometimes I'm stricken by PR moves that I can't fathom. But I think that pound for pound, I'm enjoying these players getting to be themselves more. But it does give you an idea of certain things. And for me, there were signs very early that this wasn't going to work out and they were going to leave, right? And I think if it were other guys, people may have been able to delude themselves into thinking that we had a chance to keep them for longer than we did. But Jared Allen, my boy, they massacred my boy. They took him out of here. And I just, guy was getting like 20 rebound games and stuff like that. He was playing the right way. And hopefully Nick Claxton seems to be coming into his own and being able to be groomed to do some of the same things and serve some of those same purposes. I'm excited about that, but guys like Jared Allen, D'Angelo Russell, I've resolved to just never talk shit about because he was a part of that that great team for me. Like guys like Brook Lopez, I'm always rooting for. Karis LeVert. Do you have special attachments to guys that end up in different places?
Well, sometimes I will say quickly that because revisionist history, with the big three, I do that. I would do that every time. I would
Oh yeah,
every single time you make those signings, every single time you make that trade.
you have to.
Yeah, you have to. So just so because I see it all the time on Twitter, the Nets really traded all this for James Harden. I get it; it sucks now, but you do it every single time, no
100%.
questions asked. But as far as attachment to other players, I mean, a lot of guys are out of the league now. But ISO Joe is my favorite player of all time, which I know is a bit odd for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really when I started fully diving into basketball.
Yeah.
Like I said, I am young, but he was the first guy I was like, the contract, I understand. Everyone always talks about the contract being bad, but I loved ISO Joe, so always, kind of followed him a little bit, around when he left, even just rooting for him. I'm not a big D'Lo guy. I do talk shit about D'Lo. I was obviously, but
It's
man,
hard not to.
I mean, he can't create any separation. So I have my, and I do think he still is immature, as Minnesota kind of clued to. But I do love Jared Allen.
Yeah, we got out at a good time. We got out of the D-Lo business at a great time.
Yeah, we got out of D'Lo at the perfect time.
Yeah.
Man. You couldn't get that shit better.
And that's part of the reason I don't talk no shit, because I'm just like, phew. It went great. It went great. But like you, I feel like getting Kyrie and Kevin Durant, you do that every time. But were you, like me, also frustrated when you saw the direction it was taking? Was there a point for you where that flip kind of switched, or am I off base here?
I mean, there was definitely frustration that was felt throughout the process. Obviously, with the whole COVID thing, the vaccine, it was annoying. I'm not going to straight up blame Kyrie. I get some, obviously, you have your own decisions with those things. So, that's kind of where I leave it. That was his decision. I respect it. That's how he feels. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's kind of where I stand with that. And then the injuries were obviously very annoying, and you couldn't stay healthy at all.
Yeah,
tough to deal with. James Harden coming here because he was tired of having to be an Iron Man and then having to be an Iron Man.
and
then he became a marshmallow. Yeah. Some rough shit.
Yeah, and with James Harden, it's always tough because even with what's going on with him now, it's never been this dramatic. Clearly there's some level of desperation to not have to play with that team anymore, as far as he went publicly. But with James Harden, it's always like you can't. I'm not even as mad as James Harden because I think he got here, and I don't know if James Harden is nuanced enough to parse through his feelings about some of the Kyrie Irving shit that was going on, right? I think he was just coming from an organization where he was like that guy in a sense, and now he's in an organization and Kyrie Irving is burning sage and doing whatever he wants,
and he also became visibly upset.
And I don't want to overstate that, but I will say that James Harden seems to be this shit is a job to him, right? This is work. And I have the unique opportunity to kind of leverage my value and kind of go different places if I'm not feeling it here.
Yeah.
And a lot of, again, sports culture is trying to juxtapose our lot in life with these athletes. And I think people should not do that with entertainers in general, right? Because you're never going to make your shit match up with theirs, right? They work in a very unique space. And so people are like, well, when I'm mad at my job, I can't just demand to go somewhere else. And it's like, yeah, but you don't do their job, right? This is kind of.
I mean, and you can just quit.
Yeah, exactly, and you'll see that the market for you is very different than the market for somebody like James.
Man. You ain't looking too pretty once you quit.
Yeah, and then listen, nobody's tuning in on a Tuesday night to watch you type up fucking notes, right? To watch you do paralegal work.
Nobody cares.
Nobody's trying to see that. Nobody cares. Who's the greatest office typist of all time? I don't know. They're not making statues of that guy. He's not.
Yo, man, Dwight Schrute. Yeah, they got statues of him somewhere.
I was in Scranton. I didn't see it. They got the office sign. They don't have him.
They don't got it?
Ah. I was pissed. I felt like it should have been outside of Poor Richards. It's not.
Yeah, definitely should have been. They definitely should have been at least a Michael Scott statue out there. They got to do it.
There was a sweet cover band there, though.
No, that's what's up.
Yeah, but for me, it was it was a little tough because when the writing was on the wall, the writing was on the wall, and I felt those guys didn't have a chance to ingratiate themselves with the fans in Brooklyn. And the more I watch Mikal Bridges operate, the more I realize I don't think those guys made a real effort either. And I think that there was this air of, well, we're already established stars. People will just be happy to have us here, and there were. But I remember I used to work down Flatbush, which is in Brooklyn, and I remember one day I was walking, and this was like after Kevin Durant had demanded to trade the first time. I remember I was walking and I saw a mural of Kevin Durant, and I was like, why the fuck is there a Kevin Durant mural here? Right. And then I was like, oh, fuck, he plays for us, right? But it was like, it never got there with those guys, where I think that young people enjoy Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving's brands, but what we're seeing now is that these players' brands come really far removed from the team that they're on now, where it's the two things are still attached. The two things still tend to rise and fall together to a degree, but people attach to the players now, right? First and foremost, and then the team, right? Or people have favorite players that aren't on favorite teams. Even me, I love seeing team. There's no hate in my heart when another team in the East is doing better than us, especially when based on the level of, based on their roster and based on the talent of their management, it's working for them right now. Like I'm not.
Don't let this guy fool you, man. This guy right here that's sitting next to me, don't let him fool you. Yeah, this whole Nets fan thing.
I'm allowed to appreciate greatness when my team's not great.
It's a coy, bro.
I'm allowed
he has about 10 different favorite teams, right? That he's a ride or die fan for.
Oh God.
And about 5 of them are player based. Just like he said.
I love the sport, all right? And some players are so great that you just got to like what you see. Am I right?
I got you.
Yeah, I think when you... So there's 2 different ways to look at it. There's stands, and I've always been very vocal about my dislike for the diehard stands.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's a poor way to, enjoy the game or watch the game. Is kind of locking in on one single player on one single team, not even a full team, just locking in on a player.
Yeah.
But I do think it is better to, I don't know, spread your horizons a little bit, watch other teams more, which you can do when you find players you really like watching. Like for me, that's Ant and De'Aaron Fox. Mm-hmm. And obviously some of the other guys like Luka is must-watch TV. Mm-hmm. So is Jokic.
Essentially,
obviously LeBron and Kawhi and stuff, but
essentially you are looking at the teams themselves because those players are on them, basically.
Yeah. But then there's the stands who couldn't care less. Mm-hmm. It just matters about their favorite player. Yeah, if you get what I'm saying.
It's a lot. And I think that's the majority. I think that's definitely the majority of the fan base.
It's kind of what you'll see, like on a general basis. I could say, yeah, but then again, sometimes I feel like the internet also affirms some of our what we already think, right? And that, like, sometimes I have to remind myself that like a very small portion of the world's population is actually using social media, but it just
oh yeah, absolutely, especially Twitter.
Yeah, where it's like sometimes it'll drive you to be like, and especially in those sports. And listen, NBA Twitter gets, I think, a bit of a better reputation than it deserves because the heights of it and some of the people in the space are truly phenomenal. But I think like for like the average, I think a lot of it is tough because it's on Twitter, and Twitter kind of promotes negative interaction. Right. And I think I
will say, I think it's the best of the major sports, though. I really do. Mm-hmm. Because all the major sports, Twitter is kind of iffy, but like dive into baseball Twitter for a bit, it's bad. Like that is by far the worst. I don't care what anybody says. Baseball Twitter is unbearable.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I got it.
Well, I'll say this. This is how I view MLB baseball Twitter. Is a bunch of, it's more kids than adults on baseball Twitter, or older, like a really old crowd, or really young crowd. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, racist and sexist, and they just hate almost everybody. So, that's how I view MLB Twitter. It's a rough scene. And that's just my opinion, but that's how I see it. NBA, I think there's a more middle-aged crowd that's a bit more respectful and mature, but still it's sprinkled with a lot of immaturity, I guess,
Of
but not
course.
as much as the other, fields.
I think there's no real way to get away from, you know, immature people on the just the whole internet space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The whole social media.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the
There's no way
system
to
kind of rewards
escape
it, and it's tough, right? There's people getting paid a lot more than us that can't figure this fucking shit out, how to make this a healthy experience. So it's like the rest of us will continue like managing our relationship to social media as if like we're on a nicotine patch trying to figure out how to like not kick this drug but have a healthy relationship with it because we need it or because it serves us in some way. But to keep it pointed, when did it become apparent to you, because you're a pretty young guy, that you can be an important figure to so many in the fan base?
First of all, saying that means a lot. It caught me off guard. If you want my honesty, like how fast the page grew.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2 off seasons ago, we had like 1,000 followers, and I'm like, there's not a lot of like big team accounts for the Nets. I'm like, all right, let me like really start going at this and really, giving it my best effort and kind of putting my best foot forward here and discussing the free agency, how it should, in the draft and everything in between. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, it's like, oh, you got 10, oh, you got 20, oh, you got 30, and now we're at 34. So I would say the beginning of this season, when I started talking to people that are far more important than I am in this field, if that makes sense, then I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I figured this out a bit. Like a name that comes to mind right away when I say that is, so like Jamal Crawford hopped in the space a few times. I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right. And then Perkins did.
Wow.
And then Dante DiVincenzo was in the space right before he got traded, right before he got traded. And I thought that was pretty funny because he hopped out of the space and he got traded like a minute later. So it was a call from his agent. So that's when I knew like I'm doing shit right.
Right.
Hell yeah. And how is that? I guess how has that been for you? Like, I know it's been a rewarding feeling, but since you said it's happened a little quicker than you could have imagined, do you ever get that kind of sense? I think we all kind of struggle with imposter syndrome on some level, and then we just we fortify who we are. We get more comfortable in our confidence, and we step into who we are. Did this always feel like something that you were ready for, or was it something that you had to learn really fast how to handle the responsibility of having so many eyes on you?
I'm pretty upfront and honest and real with myself and others that I feel like all times.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of who I am. I don't. Some people are able to kind of falsify themselves and just go with kind of like a fake persona. Which I mean, I guess Netcast, from the perspective of name, is a fake persona. But I'm able to just sit back and say, you know what, I'm gonna just be myself, because what is the enjoyment of not being myself? Right. I can't sit here all day and talk about sports and discuss life things and just fake it all. It wouldn't be enjoyable. It'd be stressful. It would be annoying. So I think it's kind of always just been there, just being myself, being really confident in who I am and what I do, and knowing I'm gonna outwork as many people as possible and use all my resources to my ability and to push myself forward above competition. Like, I've used this for reference. This was my college project too for sports media. It was make like a website and a podcast and a social media account last semester. I walked in the first day of class. He said, that's the 3 main projects. You have to hit this mark with this many articles, this mark with this many podcasts, this mark with this many posts. And I said, I'm done. First day, done. So that was actually really cool for me, was walking in like, I finished all 3 of your projects before it started. I'm done.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So I showed up to that class once a week for the rest of the semester to just check in. And that was really cool for me, which is a little bit off topic, but I just thought that was a cool experience. Yeah. And really unlikely as well.
Yeah, but that's phenomenal, because these things. One thing that I'm very big on is our stories, and that people, oftentimes we have all of us individuals just walking around, we have more phenomenal stories than we'll give ourselves credit for. It's just that we don't always necessarily look at our life as a story, because for us it's not, right? We're just living. And the older you get, the more you begin to reflect on things, and eventually you make it a sense of your story, right? You don't write an autobiography when you're 22. You you get a sense of that a little bit later, but these are the things. Like even when we talk about a guy like Anthony Edwards, and I was talking to Biggs about a week ago, and I when the FIBA roster is announced, and I just go, yep, he's checking all the boxes, and he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, he's just putting together the makings of a phenomenal story. He's doing this the right way. It's always great when we got a guy like Jokic who is like found money, a guy like Giannis who is in a sense found money, but a guy like Ant, the way his story goes, he's just checking all the boxes of here's his experience. He's notching this down. He's knocking this down. He's making all-stars. He's doing this. Now he's representing Team USA. He's probably going to represent us in the Olympics if he gets a chance. If not this cycle, then for sure the next one. But it's to draw those parallels. It's always interesting to hear what are the moments where people begin to realize that things can be different for them, or that they're different even than they might have considered.
Yeah, I think when I had a college payment, and I looked in my because like I you got like sponsors and stuff and little stupid deals or whatnot, and I looked in there and I'm like, okay, I can pay for my my tuition this semester with Twitter money. I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Hell
like, this is because I have 2 jobs too, so like I'm kind of spread out. Sometimes stressing. You're like, I got 2 jobs. I got to get Netcast going. I got school. Right. But to see that, it's like I don't have to touch all the money I've been saving up, for like down the line. Obviously a house, a new car. I'm like, this is pretty awesome. I don't have to really dig into my savings at all. And that Twitter, on top of just being so much fun and enjoying meeting so many people, is helping fund school, has been really just great for me. And I'm probably gonna, when I got to pay on mid-September, I hope I can do the same thing. So I think it's been really cool as well.
Yeah, and I think you're going to continue to crush it, and I think that you're going to continue to be successful, and I think that you really do have a great attitude, and I think that will help you through any obstacles that you do face. Because that's one thing about life is we don't pretend that we won't face obstacles, but we can prepare ourselves to be the type of men and women that can overcome those obstacles. Because some people would say that the measure of a man is not how he handles great times, but adverse times. And I think that you're building the type of man that can handle both.
Oh man, thank you. I do appreciate that. I mean, obviously being young, it's a lot of learning to everything. A learning curves, kind of navigating things for the first time, a lot of things for the first time. But I also will say it's nice having, I think the biggest thing that people take for granted is the people closest to you. Like, your parents, other family members and friends, just to look to them more and say, hey, you know what? You've been through this before. I'm not going to act. People get nervous to reach out to others, I feel like, as if they're being,
like or something like that.
Yeah, a bother. Yeah. Like, no, you're not being a bother, though, because you can do that for that person, and later down the line they might ask something from you, and you'll be right there for them. I think that's the key with relationships as a whole, is not feeling like a bother, like you said, and just being able to reach out and make the best version of yourself, and not being scared to do so or nervous to better yourself.
Yeah, it's so important, man. And when people get in dark spaces or they're not their best selves, they're often, losing sight of that and hiding from people, and it suffice to say it doesn't work, right? That's not how we're wired, and that's not how community works, and that's not how we've evolved. But I want to touch on, because you recently were able to interview Rondae Hollis Jefferson. I want to talk about establishing relationships with players. What has that been like for you? And where in the process does that start happening?
Well, Rondae, I gotta say, is one of the most genuine, kind people I've had the pleasure of speaking with on, the platform.
Yeah, and he seems like he's got his head on straight, man. That piece about needing more love and even the mindfulness app that he's developing for children. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he took he let the vets take him under their wing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he did. And I think that was a really big thing. And he talked about that, saying, I got here at first. I wasn't as mature as I needed to be. I didn't do these things right. But I took bits and pieces from so many vets. I think he mentioned Damari Carroll and Dudley being especially Dudley being really big in that. And him being such a nice, kind person and also taking other people under his wing as he's gotten older, it's made him a really nice interview and really makes it easy to build a relationship with a player like him
Mm-hmm.
that opens up and is just really honest and true to himself and confident in himself. And I will say, at that, I do think you'll see him back in the league pretty soon, hopefully. So that confidence and being true to yourself and honest really does pay off in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. He's and he's managed to pick up a lot of traction in just what he's doing right now, and him successfully modeling a lot of elements of his game after Kobe. So you do think that he should be back in the league? I do think that I don't see why not. I think that if he can play, and it's looking like he can play, I think that he should be there. There's a guy like Dante Exum. People are expecting to maybe make a little bit of a resurgence in the league as well, and I think that it's great that these players don't have to be bitter about spending periods of time outside of the league. It's great to see what the league has been able to do in general, because I think that what the average person may not understand about the NBA is that, well, number one, they've always been highly innovative and willing to make changes to the formula, to the sauce, and willing to try to build for the future. And I think that the NBA has successfully expanded their game to be a global one, and has successfully expanded the impact of the game on a global level in a way that is so phenomenal that we're seeing so many things change. The norms change, where being in the NBA for a period of time and then going overseas is no longer something that should be ashamed of. Some players would take a deal overseas over a deal in the NBA at a particular time if it's not what works for them. And it allows them to be positively motivated, I think, and to continue their patterns of growth. And it also adds to the worth and merit of international competition, right? Because I think that consuming or caring about international basketball for a while was like viewed as some hoity-toity thing that like only quote unquote nerds or purists would give a damn about. But I think that the profile of the international game and the profile of the international player has grown so significantly. We're in a point right now where if we fielded an Olympic team, there would be moments where we didn't have the best player on the floor, possibly. And that's
absolutely, yeah,
that is foreign. That is weird, especially in a game of basketball. Listen, there's 5 guys on the court, 10 guys total. One guy just has an outsized impact on the course of that game. You can't tell me that Jokic can't win you one, like one important one, like having Jokic on that team can't win you one. I don't know.
The best player in the world, yeah.
Yeah. And we're a little vulnerable to team, and obviously we're recording this on the heels of us having dropped the game. But and FIBA's always been a little different, right? Where we don't necessarily win FIBA every time we play, but
and we have such a young team that we sent. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
A lot of these guys.
What is it, the 4th youngest or something? 5th youngest?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and like a lot
That's
of them,
right,
it's their
right
first
there.
time there. You know what I mean? Like we were bound to drop one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think we were just gonna sweep the floor with everybody.
Yeah. But I think
that's the narrative.
I think that it's getting to the point where people used to ask the question, could there be a face of the league that wasn't American? And I think that we are, no pun intended, now light years ahead of that, right? We are now fully invested in the era of it being on equal footing. And I think that's been phenomenal. It's been one of the many successful things that the league has done. Even in their rapidly embracing different tournament styles and tinkering with seeding and playoff structure, everybody didn't like it, and that was fine. I think LeBron let us know quite, pretty quickly how he felt about it, and there was some context to that. But you've got to give it to them that they're not resting on their laurels. They're not. They don't. I'm excited to see where the product goes, and I think it's great to be a fan of a sport that is fluid in that way. Although
Absolutely.
sometimes people don't like it.
People don't like change.
Hmm.
It's scary for people. Yeah.
How do you feel
Oh,
about Ben Simmons, my man?
Yeah, I couldn't
I
wait
that-
for
know.
this. I couldn't wait for this
okay.
one.
It's a tough to answer question because like big question mark, obviously, probably the biggest question mark in the NBA this year
Yeah.
or going into the season on what's going to happen with him. I have confidence he'll be 75% of himself, 70%. That's where I'm at.
Hmm.
And a lot of that is just him being able to be a high level defender
Hmm.
and him being a really good passer and willing passer, obviously. And the rebounding also was coming back because I mean we were just an awful, awful rebounding team last season. So I think all of that will be pretty big. As far as scoring output, I expect I think I'm at 11, 12 points a game. That's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm viewing it. Maybe I'm off on that, but it seems justified.
Hmm.
But based off recent interviews where he said, you know, last season I couldn't sit a certain way and I couldn't do normal day things and getting out of bed sucked. I tend to believe him because it's not even near the as bad. But I pulled a muscle in my back and for like a week I didn't couldn't bend down. Uh,
Oh yes, I've been
could,
there too.
you can't do normal
Yeah,
shit.
yeah,
Like it sucked, and I just pulled a muscle. I didn't get that.
yeah.
Just something like that, pulling a muscle in your back. So I
Hmm.
tend to believe that if he does truly feel healthy and thinks he's as healthy as he's going to get, that he'll be better next season. Because I do understand, we all know back injuries are just a whole nother level from anything else, as
Oh
how
yeah.
easy they are to, screw up and how painful they are and how debilitating they are.
So I
Yeah.
spent a lot of my time asking people to go take a look at that picture Dwight Howard posted of the shit that they pulled out of his back after one season. Like it's
Oh, yeah.
the things that these players have dealt with, and with players not necessarily understanding the scope of injury. I mean, not with with fans not necessarily understanding the scope and magnitude of injury. Right? Like it'll be a guy like, well, I worked through a hernia in UPS for like 4 days, so I get this. This is soft. No, it's like, no, these guys are dealing with insane things, right? And when you
A
see
hernia
some
is
of the
pretty
things,
bad too, though.
no, listen, if you're working
Hernia is
UPS, a
pretty
hernia is
bad.
terrible.
I'm not gonna lie.
Sports hernia is terrible, right? But like, you can't when Kyrie Irving, who I'm not, like, again, I haven't always been the kindest to Kyrie Irving, right? But when he was streaming, I think last summer, he described the process of something going wrong with a surgery that he had with the screw in his knee from, I think, when he shattered his kneecap or something like that. It got infected or something like that, and they had to go back in. And he was talking about his leg atrophying and being really scared and considering not playing again. And it's like, people underestimate too kind of the scope and severity of some of the things these players deal with. And I think it goes into the myth making that we have of players that in the past played through things that they probably shouldn't have and didn't have the access to the sports science today. Like, shout out to Larry Bird, who everybody seems to be able to understand that with, right? But and even guys like Magic Johnson, when you think of what they were able to do in their time with the ways their careers were both cut short, and what they were still able to accomplish is phenomenal. But we can understand that a guy like Larry Bird, if he maybe hadn't played through certain things and had access to the sports science that we had today, could have had even more of a fruitful career. Right. And I don't know how we
Absolutely.
manage the balance between like lionizing guys for doing things that they probably shouldn't have and playing through things that they probably shouldn't have. Because it does serve to, I think, denigrate what is a more beneficial environment right now. Right. It's far more
Yeah.
beneficial, I think, for fans and players right now. Like that, a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who honestly I think deals with a degenerative knee condition, like it's great that he's able to manage his career in a way that still allows him to be as great as he can for as many nights a year as he can. And with what Ben Simmons is dealing with, I definitely sympathize with that. My problem with Ben Simmons has is just, he's a troll, man. He's a troll, and I don't think he's doing it on purpose, but it's like, I feel like he's not very aware from like a PR perspective of what he's saying. and again, I'm not like super.
That's fair.
I'm not toxic in my fandom where it's like I don't think he owes us anything, right? But it's just like sometimes I can't imagine how he doesn't see the irony in certain things. Like you're taking all these jump shots in the summertime and putting them up for us to see. I would surmise you want us to be excited about the prospect of you shooting more jump shots. I'm seeing turnaround fade. This is every summer. There's turnaround fadeaways. There's stop and pops in transition, and I get it. Like they all look like superheroes. I've seen Montrezl Harrell tween spin off people, right, and dunking in the lane. Like I get it. Like
All in the Jordans, going
I do
crazy.
get it.
That's crazy.
But I mean, granted, he was playing against like the Instagram guy, but like you know what I mean. Like it was, I've seen it happen, right? It happened more fluidly than you think, right? Like, but even Shaq, a lot of people don't realize that while it wasn't something that happened extremely often, Shaq brought a level of versatility and being able to handle it in transition and beat his man off the dribble on the occasion that he saw fit, right? But it's like I respect what Ben Simmons is. But I sometimes I wonder if he realizes, and maybe it's our fault. Maybe it's our fault for wanting him to do things that he perhaps is just committed to not doing and has just leveraged what his value was at the time. But I think he's like at a precipice of what he could earn in his career and how great he could be, right? In the sense that if we're going to dignify the whole idea of greatness in the first place, where it's like, we're at a very important time for him, and I hope that he can elevate his play, not from a selfish perspective as a Nets fan. Yeah, it'd be great if he either was so good that he made us markedly better or he was good enough that we could trade him for something of value. But I do hope that Ben Simmons could turn into somebody that is a very, very productive player and commands more and more money as he enters his prime further. Because I think it would suck if some of these poor moments, like what happened in Philadelphia and how everybody handled that situation crassly, in my opinion. I think Doc Rivers, we make a lot more than I think maybe we should from a logical perspective of what he said after that game. However, I think from a human perspective, he totally got it wrong and totally alienated Ben Simmons. And Joel Embiid is more ornery than he gets credit for being, right? I think that so I think that I definitely don't want to see a Dwight Howard effect where that taints people's view of him from now on. Right. And it's not even just from a self-serving perspective, but I do feel like I can see us being at a moment where there's a time where we take Ben Simmons seriously and there's a time when he's a joke. And it doesn't always have to be something that's deserved, but we've seen that it can have serious implications for these guys. Right. And I would hate for us to be talking about Ben Simmons as like a what if that guy put it together type of deal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Because he's an alien as far as just being an absolute freak of nature. Being able to move and handle the basketball like he does at his size.
Yeah, like a 6'10" Jason Kidd is with like stupid bounce is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we see more of that this year because he couldn't jump last year, really couldn't get into a defensive stance. Like I don't think people really picked up on that, and it did bother me because I understand he played bad, but I just want people to see like, hey, he can't even barely catch lobs right now. Like, I hope that was seen by everybody. He's not himself.
This guy went from being able to sit down and pester Damian Lillard to like you said, not being able to get an effective stance. You know what I mean?
Now,
absolutely.
I have a serious question. Where do you see your Brooklyn Nets? Just early prediction. Like where do you see them falling in the whole seeding? In the
I think 8th seed. That's where I've been at. Maybe not. Yeah. They'll be a play-in team. We'll say that. Playing team.
All right.
I think that's fair. I think it's justified just based off the fact that I think they will be. Well, obviously, your best player is going to play pretty much every game, if not hopefully every game.
Yeah.
I think that's huge, and they are just built like a regular season team, which is having quite good depth. Being a relatively healthy basketball team,
right?
Full of guys that play a lot of games.
Yeah, a lot of really good role players.
And just having that mentality of going out there every night and locking down.
Yeah,
they're that good. I think they have top 3 defensive personnel. I mean, Ben Simmons when he looks healthy. I'm just gonna pin him in he'll be a damn good defender next year.
Mm-hmm.
You got Mikal. You got Dorian Finney-Smith, Nick Claxton.
Yep.
Cam Johnson isn't amazing, but he is a solid and very versatile defender. You got Royce when he's not playing point of attack, because I don't know why he had to last year, but it wasn't a fair ask.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have the quickness or lateral movement abilities to be point of attack. So he looked bad, but when you had him in when he was playing post defense on power forwards, he looked great. And when you had him on the wing, he looked great. Mm-hmm. And then they brought in one of the best point of attack defenders in all of basketball last year, which I know went really under the radar. And whenever I bring up Dennis Smith Jr. being a great defender, I just say watch the film. I posted some highlight videos on it even, and the analytics to it. He had some of the best defensive analytics in all of basketball last year, and the tape backed it up. Okay. He was absolutely amazing defensively and was one of the two bright spots in Charlotte last year. Okay. So I think it's hard to not pin them in as such a good defensive team that they're not a playing team and a tough team to beat. Yeah. And just annoying to play in on a night-in, night-out basis.
And you got your boy Cam Thomas over there.
We'll see with him. We'll see. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's got to put it together. That's another guy where it's the scoring ability is absurd. He has high-end scoring ability. He can score over anybody, can beat anybody one-on-one, any spot on the floor he can get a bucket from. Right. But he's got to know when to pass, when to take that ISO possession, when to put up a shot. And the defense isn't great, but I will say he was a better defender last year than Dinwiddie was, for what that's worth, right. And better than Joe, and better than Seth, and better than Patty. So it's not. I don't want to hear it's just defense. Sure, his defense has got to be a little bit better. He's never going to be a great defender.
Better offensively, in my opinion, too.
Yeah, he's got to know where to be. The IQ has to be raised, and the awareness has to be much better.
Yeah.
That's totally. I feel it though. You guys are gonna have a tough time though, because you seeing my boys in that good old first time ever playing tournament. Yeah. We're in the same group, guys.
Okay.
We're in the same group, guys.
He's a Celtics guy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're in the same group, guys.
You think they're going into play-in?
Oh no! I meant the in-season tournament. My fault, not the play-in.
Oh yeah, no, we got y'all. It's okay. 26-point comeback again. I'm not worried.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
That's so that can happen too. That's gonna piss me off.
That was a good ass game. I missed the first quarter and a half.
Right.
And I haven't missed that much of a game in almost half a decade. Mm-hmm. But I woke up and I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck? I fell asleep. All right. Yeah. And I looked and I'm like, oh, it's I think there was 4 minutes left in the second. I'm like, yeah, they're down 20 something again. I'm like, oh, damn. All right. Well, obviously they turned the game on. And in the half, they're playing well. I'm like, okay. And they got some rhythm. And then Mikal just came out firing. And he was lighting up Tatum, lighting up Al. They're playing lockdown defense. And I kind of saw the potential with that group. Mm-hmm. Where it's okay, they can be something fun. Yeah. And that was without Ben at all. Ben was not there. And I do think, I know the free agent accusations, I forget it, ads haven't been really flashy. Mm-hmm. But adding guys Lonnie Walker, Dennis Smith Jr., Watford, who I think will be the backup power forward next season. Mm-hmm. I think he's better than Baisley is. Mm-hmm. I do think he's better than Harry Giles as well. Mm-hmm. We brought both those guys in. I do think you'll see Watford impress because he was impressive in Portland. And why they got rid of him, I have absolutely no idea. So it is some sneaky depth piece ads that I think can help this team out a little bit. And just being healthy, having continuity, and having a full offseason and training camp together, that the team will be better.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing how good we can be too, because I think that there's a benefit to being able to just have an organic experience and root for your team and see what we can do and see how it grows in the future.
Absolutely.
And we have that again right now, so hopefully it builds to something as great as what we saw with Kevin Durant and Kyrie and James Harden, just as far as magnitude of our importance and our expectations. But I'm ready to have fun again. I'm ready to
I'm
have
also.
fun again.
I can't wait for this season, man. I can't wait.
Yes, sir. And we do appreciate you. We're not gonna take up too much more of your time. We gave the folks an hour, and you gave us an hour, and we're really grateful for that, man.
Yeah, we appreciate.
Oh
it,
yeah, of course.
From the Salted
Anytime, guys.
Nets-
I'd love to come back on.
From the Salted
When we
Nets
would love
all
to
the way
have you.
The Netscast, man. We would love to do this again, bro. For real.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. Yeah, this is one of the more enjoyable podcast experiences I've had. It's just a very calm, level-headed talk, just about a little bit of everything, not just basketball, but discussing other things.
Right.
So I've had a really nice time.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, we try to create that where it's like, we're funny guys. When it's time to joke, we're joking. When we find things funny, we find things funny. But there are important things that we want to make sure that are being served in this space, man. And a part of that is fans being able to create great content for other fans. And as a Nets fan, I really do respect that. And I would like to do that for other people as well, man. So I definitely
Absolutely.
appreciate being able to have somebody like you join us.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
You have a good one, bro.
Yeah, thanks to you guys.
Alrighty. That was another episode of the Salted Nets podcast. My man Caleb tore the house down.
I know we're gonna be back with another fire. We're gonna be back.
We gave you what you needed. We gave you what you needed. And we appreciate y'all.